What I saw in court today, I will honestly never forget it. And I mean that. I've been in that courtroom plenty of times. I've seen people argue about cars. I've seen neighbors fight over fences. I've seen strangers yell at each other over money. But today was different. Today hit in a way I wasn't ready for. Because this time, it wasn't strangers. It was two best friends standing on opposite sides of a courtroom. Two people who had known each other their whole lives. Two people who had grown up together, laughed together, cried together. And now, they couldn't even look at each other. The woman was named Rosa. She was small, with tired eyes and shaking hands. She walked in holding a folder so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She sat down, took a deep breath, and stared straight ahead. Not left, not right, just straight at the judge's desk. The man was named Marcus. He came in a few minutes later, tall and relaxed, like he had just wandered in from a nice lunch. He loosened his collar, pulled out his chair, and sat down with the smallest smile on his face. A smile. In a courtroom, over a case that had clearly shattered his best friend. And sitting up front, calm and steady, was the woman who would decide everything that day. Judge Laika. She had sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she looked at you, it felt like she could see straight through you, through every excuse, every lie, every fake smile. She was patient, but she was firm, and she had zero patience for nonsense. Let me take you back to how all of this started. Rosa and Marcus had been best friends since childhood. They grew up on the same street. They went to the same school. When Rosa's father died when she was 12, Marcus was the one sitting beside her at the funeral, holding her hand. When Marcus failed his driving test 3 times, Rosa was the one who laughed with him, not at him, and drove him to the 4th test and waited outside. They were the kind of friends people looked at and said, "Now that is real friendship." Years went by. They grew up. Life got harder. Jobs got stressful. Bills got bigger. But they stayed close. They called each other every day. They celebrated every birthday. In every way that really mattered, they were family. Then, about 2 years ago, Marcus called Rosa with big news. He told her he had a dream, a real one. He wanted to start a food truck, not just any food truck, a special one. He had spent months planning the menu: jerk chicken, oxtail stew, plantains, rice and peas, all the recipes his grandmother had taught him as a child. He said the truck would be called Marcus's Kitchen. Rosa listened carefully to everything he said. She could hear how excited he was. And because she loved him, because she trusted him completely, she said yes before he even finished asking. She gave him $15,000. Not as a loan, not with a contract, not with a handshake and witnesses. She gave him the money out of love and trust, and she only said one thing: "Use it for the truck, Marcus. Make us proud." And Marcus, he thanked her. He hugged her. He promised her the world. He told her that once the truck opened, she would eat for free every single day. He told her she wasn't just his best friend. She was part of the dream. Rosa went home feeling warm inside. She had helped her best friend chase his dream. That felt good. But then the weeks passed. Then the months passed. And the food truck never showed up. Rosa started asking questions, gently at first. "Hey, Marcus, how's the truck coming along?" Marcus would say things like, "Oh, just dealing with some paperwork," or "The supplier is moving slow, but we're almost there." Rosa believed him. Because why wouldn't she? This was Marcus. Her Marcus. Then one day, Rosa saw something on social media that made her stomach drop. There was Marcus, smiling, standing in front of a brand new widescreen TV in what looked like a very expensive apartment. A new apartment, one she had never seen before. She scrolled more. More photos. A trip to the Bahamas. New designer shoes. A fancy dinner at a restaurant she'd always wanted to try but always said was too expensive. She set her phone down. Her hands were shaking. She called Marcus. No answer. She called again. Nothing. She left a message. No reply. She texted him. One word came back. Busy. Rosa sat there and did the math in her head. $15,000. That was money she had saved for 3 years. Money she had skipped vacations for. Money she had worked overtime for. Money she had planned to use for her future. And it was gone. Spent. Not on a food truck. Not on a dream. Spent on televisions, trips, shoes, and things that had nothing to do with the truck. And Marcus wasn't even brave enough to answer the phone. That was the moment Rosa made her decision. If Marcus wouldn't talk to her as a friend, then she would make him talk to her in court. So she filed a lawsuit, $15,000. And that's how, on that warm Tuesday morning, 2 lifelong best friends ended up standing on opposite sides of a courtroom, with a judge between them and the truth about to come out. I got there early that morning. The courtroom was already buzzing. People were sliding into the wooden benches behind the barrier. Some were whispering to each other. Some were checking their phones. A few looked like they'd come just for the drama, and honestly, nobody could blame them. Word about this case had been spreading for weeks. The room smelled like old wood and fresh coffee from somebody's travel mug. The lights overhead were bright and a little harsh. Everything felt serious. Real. Rosa walked in first. She moved slowly, like someone who hadn't slept in days, which, as I later found out, she hadn't. Dark circles sat under her eyes. Her shoulders were hunched a little, like she was carrying something heavy. She had that same thick folder in her hands, stuffed with papers, and she placed it carefully on the table in front of her. Then she sat down, straightened her back, and folded her hands on the table. She didn't look around. She stared straight ahead. Somebody in the crowd whispered, "That poor thing." A few minutes later, Marcus came in. He walked through the door with an easy, loose step, like a man who was late to lunch, but not really worried about it. He looked around once, spotted Rosa's back, and his jaw tightened just a little. That was the first and only sign of discomfort I saw on his face. After that, it disappeared. He sat at his table, rubbed the back of his neck, and leaned back in his chair. He didn't look at Rosa either. By then, the courtroom had gone very quiet. You could feel it. That uncomfortable, electric silence that settles in when something painful is about to happen. People stopped whispering. Someone put their phone away. A little child sitting beside her mother asked, "Mommy, are they in trouble?" And the mother quietly shushed her. Then the door behind the main desk opened. Judge Laika walked in. Everybody stood, all at once, like a wave. That is what real respect looks like. Judge Laika walked to her seat with calm, steady steps. She wasn't in a hurry. She didn't need to be. She set her folder down, adjusted her seat, and looked out over the room. Her eyes moved slowly from left to right, calm, sharp, and watchful, like a lighthouse scanning dark water. She sat down. The room sat down. She opened her folder, looked down at the papers for a moment, then lifted her gaze. When she spoke, her voice was deep and clear. Every word mattered. "Good morning. This court is now in session. We are here today for the case of Rosa versus Marcus. The plaintiff, Rosa, is claiming the amount of $15,000 from the defendant, Marcus, which she says was given to him for the purpose of starting a business, a food truck, and was not used for that stated purpose. Is that correct? She looked at Rosa. Rosa stood up. Her voice was soft but steady, like someone doing her best not to fall apart. Yes, Your Honor, that is correct. Judge Laika nodded and turned to Marcus. Marcus cleared his throat and shifted in his seat. Your Honor, I want to say, with respect, that it's a little more complicated than that. One eyebrow from Judge Laika went up. Just one, slightly. But in that courtroom, that tiny movement said everything. Mr. Marcus, everything is a little more complicated when someone owes money. You will have your time to explain. For now, do you understand the claim being made against you? Marcus cleared his throat again. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Then let us begin. Judge Laika looked at Rosa and gave a small, calm nod. Rosa, you may speak. Tell the court, in your own words, exactly what happened. Start from the beginning. Take your time. Rosa stood slowly. She picked up her folder, then set it back down. She didn't need it yet. She was going to say this from memory, from the heart. She turned to face the judge, and when she opened her mouth, her voice cracked just a little on the first word. Your Honor, Marcus and I have been best friends for over 20 years. We grew up together. He was like a brother to me. Not like a brother. He was my brother. In every way that matters. She stopped and swallowed hard. The room was silent. About 2 years ago, Marcus called me. He was so excited. He told me he wanted to start a food truck. He had the name, he had the menu, he had the whole plan. He just needed money to get started. He said $15,000 would be enough to get the truck, get it registered, get the supplies, everything. She reached into her folder and pulled out a piece of paper. I gave him the money, Your Honor. All of it, at once. I had been saving it for 3 years. I worked extra shifts. I skipped holidays. I kept telling myself it was for my future. And when Marcus came to me with his dream, I thought giving it to him was giving it to my future too, because he was my family. A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Somebody let out a slow breath. I didn't ask him to sign anything. I didn't write a contract, because you don't do that with family. You trust family. And I trusted Marcus completely. She looked down at her hands for a moment. But the months went by. No truck. Every time I asked him, there was a new excuse, paperwork, suppliers, permits, always something. And I waited. I waited because I believed him. Her voice was starting to shake now. She pressed her lips together and tried to steady herself. Then I saw the photos. On social media. A new television. New shoes. A vacation to the Bahamas. A dinner that cost more than most people's rent. Your Honor, I have never been to the Bahamas. I was saving every cent I had. And he was spending it on... She stopped. Her eyes were filling with tears. When I tried to call him, he didn't answer. When I texted, he said he was busy. My best friend of 20 years, suddenly too busy to pick up the phone. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth with her hand. I don't just want the money back, Your Honor. I need him to stand there and explain to me why he did this. Because I still don't understand. She sat down. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth and looked up at the ceiling, blinking fast. Judge Laika watched her for a moment. Her expression stayed the same, but her eyes were thoughtful. Thank you, Rosa. I have a few questions for you. Yes, Your Honor. You said you gave him $15,000 with no written agreement, no contract, and no witnesses. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. I know it was foolish, but I am not here to judge your choices, Rosa. I am here to understand the facts. Now, Chi, do you have any proof of the transfer? Bank records? Text messages? Anything that shows the money was given and for what purpose? Rosa reached into her folder. She pulled out 3 sheets of paper and held them up. Yes, Your Honor. I have my bank statement showing the withdrawal of $15,000. I have text messages between me and Marcus where he talks about the food truck and asks for the money. And I have screenshots. Screenshots of his social media posts. The vacation, the television, the shoes, with dates, Your Honor, all taken within the same 3 months after I gave him the money. Judge Laika held out her hand. A court assistant brought the papers up to her. The judge studied them carefully. The room was so quiet you could hear the paper move. She looked up at Marcus for a moment, then back at the documents. Then she set them down. These will be entered into evidence. Marcus, you will have the chance to respond to all of this. Do you understand? Marcus, who had been sitting perfectly still through Rosa's testimony, cleared his throat. Yes, Your Honor. One more question for you, Rosa. Yes? Did Marcus ever pay back any portion of this money? Even $1? Rosa looked at Marcus for the first time since she had entered the courtroom. It was a long look. Sad. Not angry. Just deeply sad. Like someone looking at a place where something beautiful used to be. No, Your Honor, not 1 cent. She looked back at the judge. The crowd murmured. Judge Laika tapped once on her desk, and the room went quiet again. Marcus, it is your turn. Please stand and address the court. Marcus stood. He was tall, and when he straightened up, he took up a lot of space. He breathed in slowly through his nose and looked at the judge. He did not look at Rosa. Your Honor, first I want to say that I have enormous respect for Rosa. She is one of the most important people in my life, and I know this situation has hurt her deeply. I am truly sorry for that. A few people in the crowd scoffed quietly. One man shook his head. Rosa's hands, folded on the table, went still. Mr. Marcus, I appreciate your personal feelings, but this court needs facts, not feelings. Please explain your version of events. Yes, Your Honor, my version is, and I want to be honest here, that things did not go the way either of us planned. I did intend to start the food truck. I really did. I spent weeks researching. I got quotes from truck sellers. I contacted suppliers. The plan was real. Do you have any documentation of this planning? Quotes, emails, receipts from any suppliers? Marcus paused. A short pause. But in a courtroom, even a short pause gets loud. I have some emails, Your Honor, on my phone. I didn't bring printed copies. We will come back to that. Continue. The problem, Your Honor, was that the truck I found, the one I had chosen, the deal fell through at the last minute. The seller backed out. And after that, I had some personal difficulties, health issues, family stress. I wasn't in a place where I could move forward with the business. And the money? What happened to the $15,000 during this period of personal difficulty? Another pause. Some of it I used for living expenses, Your Honor. The rest, I admit, I spent on things I probably should not have spent it on. Rosa's head turned sharply toward Marcus. This was the first time he had admitted anything out loud. Her eyes were wide. Define things you probably should not have spent it on. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. A television, some clothing, a trip. A vacation? Yes, Your Honor. The crowd reacted with low murmurs. Judge Laika let it go for exactly 2 seconds before she raised her hand. Silence. Let me understand you clearly, Mr. Marcus. Rosa gave you $15,000 specifically to start a food truck. The food truck deal fell through. Instead of returning the money or informing Rosa of that, you used the money on personal items, a television, clothing, and a vacation. Yes? Yes, Your Honor. But I always intended to pay her back. You intended. And yet 2 years have passed, and not a single dollar has been returned. I know how that looks, Your Honor. I am not interested in how it looks, Mr. Marcus. I am interested in what it is. Now, did you at any point during these 2 years call Rosa and tell her that the truck deal had fallen through? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No, Your Honor. Did you send her a text, a message of any kind? No, Your Honor. Did you offer to return the money at any point? No, Your Honor, but you may continue. I want to say, Rosa and I had many conversations during that time. She knew things weren't going perfectly. She understood that business takes time. Rosa couldn't help herself. She turned fully toward him. Her voice was quiet but sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. I knew things were slow because you kept lying to me, Marcus. I didn't know the deal fell through because you never told me. I didn't know you went on vacation because you hid it. I found out on social media, Marcus, social media. Rosa, you will have the opportunity to respond. Please let Marcus finish. I'm sorry, Your Honor. She sat back down, but her eyes stayed on Marcus like they were burning. Marcus looked down at the floor for a moment, and for just a second, just one small second, I thought I saw something cross his face. Not quite guilt, but something close to it, something he was trying very hard to push away. Marcus, you say you intended to repay Rosa. When did you plan to do that? Once I got back on my feet financially, Your Honor. And are you on your feet financially now? I'm getting there. I see. And in your understanding, was this $15,000 a gift from Rosa or a loan? That question landed like a stone in still water. The whole room seemed to ripple. Marcus thought carefully before answering. I believed at the time that it was more of a gift, Your Honor. She said it without any contract. She didn't ask for anything in writing. The entire courtroom reacted. Somebody in the back said, "Oh, wow." Rosa's jaw tightened. She stared straight ahead, nostrils flaring slowly. You believed a $15,000 payment given to you for a specific purpose was a gift. It wasn't really a question. It was more like Judge Laika was placing the words out on the table for everyone to see. Yes, Your Honor. And when the purpose it was given for, the food truck, never happened, you did not feel obligated to return it. I felt terrible about it, Your Honor, and yet not terrible enough to pick up the phone. Marcus had nothing to say to that. He sat down slowly. Judge Laika spent the next several minutes going through Rosa's documents. She studied them carefully and methodically, like someone reading something that really mattered. The bank statement was clear. On one specific date, exactly $15,000 had left Rosa's account. A cash withdrawal, no question about that. The text messages were even more telling. Judge Laika read a few of them aloud. Marcus, here's a text sent from Rosa to you on the 23rd. She writes, "Hey, just checking in on the truck. How's everything going? And your reply is, going great. Just waiting on the truck seller to send me the paperwork. Should be done next week. She looked up at Marcus. Was that true when you wrote it? Marcus shifted. At the time, I was still hoping the deal would come through. So, no, it was not true, she continued. 11 days later, Rosa texts again. Marcus, haven't heard back. Is everything okay? Your reply, yeah, all good, just a small delay. Don't worry. Is that true? Your Honor, I was dealing with a lot. Is that true? No. The deal had already fallen through by then. The crowd let out a collective breath, like a wave rolling back. So on that date, you told Rosa everything was fine and there was just a small delay, while knowing full well the food truck deal was dead. And instead of telling her the truth, you spent the next 2 weeks, according to these social media timestamps, on a trip to the Bahamas. Yes, Your Honor. And the television purchase? About 3 weeks after the trip. And the clothing? Around the same time. Judge Laika nodded slowly. She laid the papers flat on her desk, folded her hands, and looked at Marcus for a long, long moment. Marcus didn't look away. He held her gaze, but his jaw was tight and his hands were very still. The kind of stillness people get when they are trying hard not to show how uncomfortable they are. Marcus, you told this court you believed the money was a gift, but these text messages show Rosa asking about the food truck, asking how the plan is progressing, and you reassuring her that it is on track. Why would she ask about the truck's progress if she believed the money was just a gift with no purpose attached? Marcus opened his mouth. And more importantly, if you believed it was a gift, why hide everything from her? Why not simply say, Rosa, the truck deal fell through. The money was a gift, so I'm using it for something else. Why keep telling her the business was moving forward for months when you knew it wasn't? Silence. Marcus pressed his lips together. Because I didn't want to disappoint her, Your Honor. You didn't want to disappoint her. I knew how much it meant to her. The dream, seeing me succeed. I didn't want to break that. So instead, you chose to lie to her for months while spending her money. No answer. Tell me, Marcus, which do you think hurt her more? The truth told early or the lie discovered late? That question filled the room. It hung in the air and landed on everybody sitting there. Marcus looked down. He didn't answer. He couldn't. I will now hear brief final statements from both sides. Rosa, you may go first. Rosa stood. She picked up her folder, then put it back down. She looked directly at Judge Laika. Your Honor, I am not a lawyer. I'm not good at fancy words. So I'm just going to say what's true. I gave Marcus that money because I loved him, because I believed in him, because in 20 years of friendship, he had never given me a reason not to trust him. That money was not just money. It was 3 years of my life. It was skipped vacations and extra shifts and saying no to myself again and again because I thought I was building toward something. And he used it to go to the Bahamas. I would not be here today if he had just talked to me. If the truck deal fell through, fine. Life happens. But call me, Marcus. Text me. Sit down and say, Rosa, I'm sorry. The plan fell apart. Here's what I want to do. We would have figured it out together. That's what friends do. But he didn't call me. He lied to me for months. And then he went silent, and I had to see his vacation photos on the internet. That is what broke my heart. Not the money, the silence, the choice to hide instead of face me. Your Honor, I am asking for my $15,000 back, not because I'm angry, Not because I want to punish him, but because it is mine. I earned it. And he spent it, knowingly, deliberately, on himself. Thank you. She sat down, quiet, steady, dignified. And this time I heard more than one person in the room take a sharp breath. Thank you, Rosa. Marcus, your final statement. Marcus stood. He adjusted his collar. He looked at the judge. Then, for the first time since walking into the courtroom, he looked at Rosa, and his face changed. The easy confidence was gone. The looseness was gone. What was left was something smaller, tired, ashamed. Sorry in the way people only get when they have no excuses left and know it. Your Honor, I've been sitting here today listening to Rosa describe our friendship, and every word she said is true. She has been the best friend I ever had, and I betrayed her trust. I'm not going to stand here and make excuses. I used money that was given to me for a specific purpose, and I spent it on myself. That was wrong. I know it was wrong. I don't believe the money was a gift. I think somewhere in my mind I told myself that because it was easier than facing what I was actually doing, but deep down I knew. I've always known. I am sorry, Rosa. I am truly, genuinely sorry. And whatever this court decides today, I'll accept it. Because I owe her that much. I owe her at least that. He sat down. Rosa was looking at her hands again. From where I sat, I couldn't see her face, but her shoulders rose and fell slowly, like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time and was finally allowed to set it down. Judge Laika did not rush. She leaned forward at her desk, looked over the papers one more time, then glanced up at the ceiling for a moment, thinking, weighing, deciding. The room was so quiet, you could hear the fluorescent lights humming overhead. After what felt like a very long time, she folded her hands and looked at both of them. I have listened carefully to both sides today. I have reviewed the evidence, the bank records, the text messages, and the social media documentation. I want to share my findings before delivering my ruling. Rosa gave Marcus $15,000 for a specific and stated purpose: to start a food truck business. That is clearly supported by the text message exchange and by Marcus's own admission in this courtroom. The money was not given freely with no strings attached. It was conditional. It was given because Rosa trusted that it would be used in a specific way. Marcus says he believed it was a gift. I do not find that credible. A gift does not come with a business plan attached. A gift does not come with monthly check-ins about how the plan is progressing. The evidence shows clearly that Rosa expected the money to go toward the truck. And Marcus knew that. When the truck deal fell through, Marcus had two choices. He could have been honest, or he could have been silent. He chose silence. Then he chose to spend the money on personal luxuries, while actively misleading Rosa about the status of the business. These were not mistakes made in confusion. These were deliberate choices made to avoid a difficult conversation. Let me be clear about something. In this court, the size of the betrayal matters as much as the size of the amount. $15,000 is not a small sum. For most working people, it represents years of sacrifice. And Rosa's testimony, her 3 years of saving, her skipped holidays, her overtime shifts, all of it matches the bank records she provided. The money was real. The sacrifice was real. The trust was real. And it was all used to fund a vacation and a television. A long pause. Marcus, I also want to say something directly to you. You apologized today. And in my view, that apology was genuine. But an apology and a ruling are two different things. One comes from the heart, the other comes from the law. And today, in this court, the law is what matters. She straightened the papers on her desk. The room leaned forward. In the case of Rosa versus Marcus, I find in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant, Marcus, is ordered to repay Rosa the full amount of $15,000. He will have 90 days to make payment arrangements. If payment is not received within that period, further legal action may be taken. This court is adjourned. She tapped her gavel once. Crack. And just like that, it was over. The room exploded into sound. Voices, exhales, chairs scraping, whispers turning into full sentences. The crowd behind me came alive all at once, like waves breaking on shore. Rosa sat still for a moment. Then she covered her face with her hand. Not crying, just breathing, just holding the moment, just letting it sink in. Marcus leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. His hands were folded in his lap. He didn't look angry. He didn't look relieved. He just looked like a man who had finally been forced to sit with what he had done and was still trying to figure out how to live with it. At some point, Rosa stood up to leave. Marcus said her name. She stopped, turned slowly. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time all day, and said quietly, so quietly I almost didn't hear him, "I'm sorry, Rosa. I really am." Rosa looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once, just once, small, and she walked out. I walked out of that courtroom slowly. I needed a minute. I think most of the people in that room did, because what I had just watched wasn't really about money, not at its core. It was about what happens when trust, the deepest, most private kind of trust, gets broken. Not by a stranger, not by an enemy, but by someone who said, "I love you like family." That is a different kind of pain. And honestly, I thought the judge's decision was completely fair. Let me tell you why. Marcus didn't make a mistake. A mistake is when you trip and knock something over. What Marcus did was a choice, made over and over again, for months. He chose not to tell Rosa the truth. He chose to spend her money. He chose silence over honesty. And every one of those choices put Rosa's trust right at the center. And he chose his own comfort instead. The money belonged to Rosa. There was no other real outcome. But here is what stayed with me long after I left that courtroom. Rosa wasn't just asking for money. She was asking to be seen. To have someone stand in front of the world and say, "Yes, I did this, and it was wrong." And in the end, Marcus did that. Not at first, not willingly, but he got there. Whether that is enough to ever rebuild what they had, I can't say. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. 20 years of friendship is a powerful thing, but so is betrayal. What I know is this. That woman walked into that courtroom with 3 years of savings, a broken heart, and nothing but the truth. And the truth was enough. It is almost always enough. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, like it made me feel something, then hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a story like this one. Because the courtroom is where the truth finally has nowhere left to hide. And I will always be there to tell you exactly what I saw. See you in the next one.